My name is Alex. I am 27 years old. I live in a small apartment with my girlfriend, Emily. At first, everything felt easy. Everything felt light. I was happy, she was happy. We laughed a lot. We ate together. We watched movies at night. It felt like a good life. Before I met Emily, I lived alone. I did everything by myself. I cooked my own food. I washed my clothes. I cleaned my room. I paid my bills. It was normal for me. It was not fun, but it was okay. I was used to it. I felt proud sometimes. I could take care of myself. When Emily and I started dating, she told me something very clear. She said, "I don't want to be your mom. I don't want to take care of your life." I remember that moment very well. I nodded my head. I said, "That's okay. I don't need that." And I really meant it. I didn't want a mom. I wanted a partner. I wanted someone equal, someone kind. After 1 year, we decided to live together. I was excited. I felt ready. I thought it would be easy. I thought it would be better than living alone. I thought we would help each other. I thought we would be a team. But after we moved in, things started to feel different. At first, it was small things. Very small things. Dirty dishes in the sink, clothes on the chair, trash not taken out. I noticed these things, but I said nothing. I didn't want to fight. I told myself, it's okay, we are still learning. But the small things didn't stay small. One night, we sat down and talked about chores. We both felt tired. We both felt annoyed. So we decided to make a plan. A simple plan. We wanted peace. We wanted balance. Emily said she really hates the kitchen. She said she doesn't like cooking. She said she doesn't like washing dishes. She even said she doesn't like touching dirty plates. She looked serious. She looked uncomfortable. I didn't understand it fully, but I listened. She said, "Can you handle everything in the kitchen?" I paused. I thought about it. Cooking every day, washing dishes every day, cleaning the stove, cleaning the table. It sounded like a lot. But I didn't want to argue. I wanted things to work. So I said yes. I told her, "Okay, I will take care of the kitchen." She smiled. She looked relieved. I felt good in that moment. I felt like I did something nice. Then she said, "For the other chores, we can split them." I asked, "What do you mean?" She said, "We share everything else. Laundry, bathroom, cleaning, shopping. We take turns." I stopped again. I felt a little confused. "Just a little," I said. "So I do all kitchen work and we share the rest?" She said, "Yes, that's fair." I didn't say anything for a few seconds. I just nodded slowly. I didn't want to start a fight. I told myself, maybe it's okay. Maybe it will work. So we made the plan. The next day, I started cooking. I made breakfast. I made lunch. I made dinner. I washed every dish. I cleaned every pan. I wiped every surface. I did it all. At first, I felt okay. I told myself, this is my job now. But after a few days, I felt tired. Very tired. Cooking every day is not easy. Cleaning every day is not easy. It takes time. It takes energy. Sometimes I just wanted to sit down. Sometimes I just wanted to rest. But the kitchen was always waiting for me. Always. At the same time, the other chores didn't feel equal. Laundry came once a week. Cleaning the bathroom came once a week. Shopping came maybe 2 times a week. These things were not daily. They were not constant like the kitchen. I started to notice this more and more. One evening, I stood in the kitchen. My hands were wet. The sink was full. I felt tired. I felt frustrated. I looked at Emily. She was sitting on the couch, looking at her phone. I felt something inside me, a small anger, a quiet anger. I didn't want to feel that way, but I did. Later that night, I asked her, "Can you help me sometimes with the kitchen?" She looked surprised. She said, "But that's your part." I said, "Yes, but it's every day. I feel tired." She shook her head. She said, "I really hate kitchen work. You know that." I felt confused again. I felt stuck. I tried to explain. I said, "I do this for both of us. Maybe you can do something extra for me too." She frowned. Her face changed. She said, "I'm not your maid, Alex." Those words hit me hard. I stayed quiet. I didn't know what to say. My mind was full of questions. Not your maid? Then what am I? I cook for both of us. I clean for both of us. I take care of the kitchen every single day. But when I ask for help, I become wrong. That night, I couldn't sleep well. I turned left. I turned right. My mind didn't stop. I felt tired. I felt confused. I felt a little hurt. I started to think, maybe this is not fair. But I also thought, maybe I am wrong. I didn't know. I really didn't know. The next morning, I woke up early. My head felt heavy. My eyes felt tired. I didn't sleep well. I walked into the kitchen and saw the dishes from last night. I stood there for a few seconds. I just looked at them. I felt quiet. I felt empty. I started washing. Water was cold at first. Then it became warm. My hands moved slowly, plate after plate, cup after cup. I didn't think much. I just worked. Emily came into the kitchen later. She smiled and said, "Good morning." I smiled back, but it was small. Not a big smile, not a happy smile. She didn't notice. She made coffee for herself. She didn't ask me if I wanted any. That was new. Before, she always asked. Before we talked more. Now it felt different. It felt distant. After breakfast, she said, "I will do laundry today." I nodded. I said, "Okay." But inside I thought, laundry is once a week. Kitchen is every day. I didn't say it out loud. I kept it inside. Days passed like this. The same routine. I cooked, I cleaned, I washed. Every day, every single day. Sometimes I made simple food. Eggs, rice, pasta. Sometimes I made something nice. Chicken with sauce, soup, salad. I tried to make it good. I wanted us to enjoy it. Emily ate the food. She said, "It's good." She smiled. She looked happy. But I didn't feel happy. I felt tired. I felt used. I didn't like that feeling. I really didn't like it. One evening, I came home late from work. My body hurt. My back hurt. I wanted to rest. I really wanted to rest. But when I opened the door, I saw the kitchen. Dirty dishes, dirty pan, food on the table. I stood there again, silent. Emily was in the living room, watching TV. She looked relaxed. She looked comfortable. I walked to her and said, "Can you help me tonight? I'm really tired." She didn't even look at me at first. Then she said, I had a long day too. I said, I understand. But I also had a long day. She sighed, a long sigh. Then she said, Alex, we already agreed. Kitchen is your job. Her voice was calm, but it felt cold. Very cold. I felt something break inside me. Not loud, just a small break. A quiet break. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I just turned around and went back to the kitchen. I cleaned everything, slowly, quietly. That night, we didn't talk much. The next day, I tried something different. I wanted to be fair. I wanted to test something. Emily had a pile of clothes, dirty clothes. She planned to wash them that evening. I asked her, Can you wash my clothes too? She looked at me like I said something strange. She said, Why? You can wash your own clothes. I said, Because I cook for both of us. I clean for both of us. She crossed her arms. She looked annoyed. She said, That's different. I asked, How is it different? She said, Because I told you I hate kitchen work, but I still share other chores. That's fair. I felt confused again. The same confusion, the same feeling. I said, But I do kitchen work every day. You do laundry once a week. She shook her head. I don't want to argue about this again. Again. That word stayed in my head. Again. So this was not the first time, and it would not be the last time. I felt tired. Not just my body, my mind, my heart. That evening, I sat alone in the kitchen after cleaning. The light was soft. The room was quiet. I looked at my hands, red, dry, tired. I asked myself, Is this normal? I remembered my life before. I did everything alone, yes. But I didn't feel like this. I didn't feel used. I didn't feel small. Now I lived with someone, but I felt more alone. More alone. That thought scared me. A few days later, things got worse. We had friends coming over for dinner. Emily invited them. She was excited. She said, Let's make something nice. I asked, Can you help me cook? She laughed a little and said, You are better at cooking. Better. That word again. So I did everything. I went shopping. I carried heavy bags. I cooked for hours. I cleaned the kitchen. I set the table. Emily talked with her friends. She laughed. She looked happy. I stood in the kitchen, listening to their voices. I felt like I was not part of it. I felt like I was just working. Just working. After the dinner, the kitchen was a mess. Plates everywhere, glasses everywhere, food on the table. I felt very tired. My body felt heavy. I walked to Emily and said quietly, Can you help me clean tonight? She looked at me, then at her friends. She smiled and said, Maybe later. Later never came. Her friends left. Emily went to the bedroom. She said she was tired, and I was still in the kitchen, alone, cleaning everything. That night, I didn't feel just tired. I felt angry. I felt sad. I felt invisible. I lay in bed next to her, but I felt far away. Very far away. I looked at the ceiling. My eyes were open. My heart was heavy. I started to think, this is not just about chores. This is about respect. and I was not sure if I had it. The next morning, I didn't feel like myself. My body moved, but my mind felt slow. I made breakfast like always: eggs, toast, coffee, simple food, easy food, but even simple things felt heavy now. Emily came to the table and said, "Thank you." She smiled like everything was normal, like nothing was wrong. I looked at her and tried to smile back, but it felt fake. It didn't feel real. I sat down and ate quietly. I didn't talk much. She didn't notice. Or maybe she didn't want to notice. I wasn't sure. After breakfast, I stood up and started cleaning again. Plates, cups, pan, same routine, same feeling. But something inside me was changing. I started to think more. I started to watch more. I started to see things clearly. That day, Emily went out with her friends. She looked happy. She dressed nicely. She said, "I will be back later." I said, "Okay." The door closed. The apartment became quiet. Very quiet. I looked around. The living room was messy. The kitchen needed cleaning again. There were clothes on the chair, shoes on the floor. I stood there and didn't move. For the first time, I didn't clean. I just sat down. I sat on the couch and looked at the mess. Minutes passed, then more minutes. I felt strange. I felt nervous. I felt guilty. My mind said, "You should clean." But another voice said, "No, stop." I listened to the second voice. I stayed still. Hours later, Emily came home. She opened the door and walked in. She stopped. She looked around. The mess was still there. Her face changed. She said, "Why is everything like this?" I looked at her and said, "I didn't clean." She frowned. "Why not?" I took a deep breath. My heart was beating fast. I said, "Because I am tired. Because I need help." She looked confused. Then she looked annoyed. She said, "But this is your job." Those words again. Your job. I stood up slowly. My hands were shaking a little. I said, "Everything is my job. Every day. Morning and night. I cook, I clean, I wash. I do everything in the kitchen. I do it for both of us." She crossed her arms. "We agreed on that." I nodded. "Yes, we did. But it's not equal. It's not fair." She shook her head. "You are making this a big problem." I felt something rise inside me. Not loud. Not angry like shouting, but strong. Very strong. I said, "It is a big problem for me." My voice was calm, but it felt heavy. She stayed quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I still do my part. I do laundry. I clean the bathroom. I go shopping sometimes." I said, "Yes, you do. But not every day. Not like me." She didn't answer. I walked to the kitchen and pointed at the sink. I said, "This never stops. It's every day. Every single day. I don't get a break." She looked at the sink, then back at me. I continued, "When I ask for help, you say no. When I ask for something small, you say you are not my maid. That hurts." She looked surprised. Maybe she didn't expect that. I repeated softly, "That really hurts." The room became quiet again. No TV, no music, just silence. I felt my heart beating, fast, strong. I added, I don't want a maid. I don't want a mom. I just want a partner. That word stayed in the air. Partner! She looked down for a moment. Then she said, I told you from the beginning, I hate kitchen work. I nodded slowly. I know, I remember. But hating something doesn't mean you never do it. She didn't speak. I felt tired again, but this time it was different. Not just body tired, it was deep. Inside. I said, I also don't love cleaning. I also don't love cooking every day. But I do it, because we live together. She sighed, a long sigh. Then she said, So what do you want? That question felt heavy. I waited a second before answering. I said, I want balance. I want fairness. Maybe we share the kitchen. Maybe we change the plan. Something has to change. She looked unsure. She looked uncomfortable. She said, I don't know. I felt a small hope, very small. I said, we can try. We can find a better way. But then her face changed again. She said, or maybe you are just complaining too much. Those words hit me hard. Complaining. Too much. I felt my chest tighten. I felt small again. Very small. I stayed quiet. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I just looked at her. In that moment, something became clear in my mind. Very clear. This was not only about chores anymore. This was about how she saw me. And maybe she didn't see me the way I thought. That thought stayed with me. All night. I lay in bed, eyes open, thinking again and again. Same thoughts, same question. Is this really a partnership? Or am I alone again? The next morning, I woke up before Emily. The room was quiet. The light from the window was soft. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at my hands again. They were still dry, still tired. I took a deep breath. I knew something had to change. I walked into the kitchen, but I didn't start cooking. I didn't touch the dishes. I just stood there. I looked at everything, the sink, the stove, the table. I felt calm, but also scared. I made a decision. When Emily woke up, she came into the kitchen slowly. She looked at me, then at the empty table. She said, No breakfast? I shook my head gently. Not today. She looked surprised. Why? I took a deep breath. My heart started beating faster again. I said, Because I can't keep doing this. Not like before. She stayed quiet. She looked at me carefully. I continued, I am tired, Emily. Not just a little tired. I am very tired. I feel alone, even when you are here. She didn't speak. She just listened. I said, I don't want to fight. I don't want to shout. I just want us to be fair. I want us to feel like a team again. The word team felt important. Very important. She looked down at the floor. Then she looked back at me. She said softly, I didn't know you felt this bad. I nodded. I tried to tell you, many times. She stayed quiet again. I could see something in her face. Maybe she was thinking. Maybe she was starting to understand. I added, When you say you are not my maid, it hurts me. Because I never asked for that. I only asked for help. My voice was soft. very soft. She took a deep breath. Then she said, I thought I was being fair. I said, I know, but it doesn't feel fair to me. Silence again. But this silence felt different. Not cold, not heavy, just quiet. After a moment, she walked to the sink. She looked at the dishes. She touched one plate. Then she looked at me. She said, What if we change things? I felt a small hope again, small but real. I said, What do you mean? She said, Maybe we share the kitchen, not every day, but sometimes. And maybe we make a new plan for everything. I nodded slowly. That sounds better. She added, And maybe I try more, even if I don't like it. That sentence felt big, very big. I said, I will also try. I don't want you to feel bad either. She gave a small smile. Not a big one, but it felt honest. That morning, we didn't make a big plan. We didn't fix everything in 1 minute. But we started talking, really talking. Later that day, we sat together with paper and pen. We wrote down chores. We looked at them carefully. Cooking, dishes, laundry, bathroom, shopping, cleaning. We talked about time. We talked about effort. We talked about feelings. This time, we both listened. Not just words, feelings. We made a new plan. We decided to take turns in the kitchen. Some days I cook, some days she cooks. If one person is too tired, the other helps. We also made small rules, simple rules. If something is dirty, we don't ignore it. If one person feels tired, we say it. If something feels unfair, we talk early. Not later, not after anger. Early. The first few days were not perfect. Emily was slow in the kitchen. She made small mistakes. Sometimes she felt frustrated. I could see it on her face. But she tried. And that was important. Very important. I also tried to be patient. I didn't complain. I didn't watch her like a teacher. I just helped when she needed it. Little by little, things changed. We started laughing again in the kitchen. Small laughs, simple moments. One night, we cooked together. Music was playing softly. We talked about our day. It felt warm again. It felt like before. Maybe not exactly the same, but close. Very close. I didn't feel alone anymore. That feeling, it mattered the most. One evening, after dinner, Emily looked at me and said, Thank you for not giving up. I smiled and said, Thank you for trying. We both smiled. Real smiles. That night, I slept well. No turning left, no turning right, just sleep, peaceful sleep. Now, I understand something important. A relationship is not about who does more. It is not about winning or losing. It is about balance. It is about respect. It is about listening. If one person feels tired, the other should care. If one person feels hurt, the other should listen. Because love is not only words, love is action, small actions, every day. My story is simple, but it taught me a big lesson. If something feels wrong, don't stay quiet forever. Speak. If something feels unfair, don't hide it. Share. And if you want a real relationship, don't act like two separate people. Be a team. Always be a team.